Welcome to Basil Chess, everyone. Today we are going to study a game that was played between Viswanathan Anand and Rustam Kasimdzhanov, 2011, a rapid game between the former world champions, two legends. And this game can show you how even an attack can be done very neatly and to some extent even looks very positional. So Anand is playing white and Rustam Kasimdzhanov is playing black. Anand starts with e4, Rustam plays e5, knight f3, knight f6. So we have the Petroff defense and it has a very solid reputation. Anand plays the main line, knight takes e5 and now d6. This is a very important move. Instead, if knight takes e4, this is a well-known trap. Queen e2 is queen e2 is much better for white, because now if knight goes back to f6, the queen falls. We have a discovered attack on the king and the queen is going to fall for sure. Instead, if queen e7, slightly better, we are going to take the knight. Of course, we are not going to win the knight for free, because black will play d6 and we are facing our own problems. We have a pin on the e file, knight moves, the queen falls, but we can let go of the knight, we can play d4, and now when the pawn takes the knight, d takes e5. Now white is clearly up a pawn in this position, and white has 4 versus 3 majority on the king side, and also white has space and white has free development. On the other hand, this is not good for black, so we can reject this line. So since Rustam is one of the best players in the world, this is obvious that d6 is played. Knight f3. Now knight takes e4. Now it's very simple. If queen e2, queen e7, black is facing no problems. This is typically equal. So instead, knight c3 was played. This is called the Nimzowitsch attack. So typically leads to opposite sides castling, but let's see how this game goes. Knight takes knight. Now I'll give you a couple of seconds to pause. Think about the position. How should white capture? Should white capture with the b pawn or should white capture with the d pawn? Away from the center or towards the center? In the game, it is d takes. It's away from the center. White captures the pawn away from the center, because white is going to get this, white's bishops are going to get this free hand. So it was captured away from the center and not towards the center. And even though white captures away from the center and white ends up with a doubled pawn, it's queen side and there is no clear majority for black. It's 4 versus 4, so it doesn't matter. It's not a problem. The endgame is not going to be a problem for white later. So in the game, it is d takes c3, bishop e7, bishop e3, very typical. And notice how the supposedly a good pawn structure for black obstructs the activity of the dark square bishop. Bishop e3. On the other hand, of course, white has free bishops. Knight c6, queen d2. So Anand is going for a queenside castle. Black castles on the king side. Queenside castling by Viswanathan Anand. Knight e5. So offering up a trade. And now taking here would be a huge mistake, because knight takes e5, pawn takes. Now the pawn structure has changed, and now black has 4 versus 3 majority on the king side, and because black's pawns are not doubled, it's an advantage for black. On the other hand, white has 4 versus 3 advantage on the queen side, but if played correctly, white cannot generate a passer in the endgame. So this is white is going to have a bad endgame here. So Instead of knight takes knight, it's king b1. Surprise, because it allows knight takes knight and it doubles the pawns, doubles white's pawns, but in return also gives the g file for white. So white can use the g file for the attack. So black rejected this and black played c6. So helps d5, so black can claim some space in the center. Anand played bishop e2. Now, of course, if knight takes knight, its bishop takes, pawn structure is not ruined. Knight g4 attacks the bishop. And in the game, it's bishop d3. And this is where Rustam, we need to appreciate the black player. Black player could have made this position very equal by just taking the knight for the bishop. And of course, pawn takes, we'll have to live with this isolated pawn. So instead, white would take with the queen. And yeah, this is fairly equal, d5, and black has the two bishops and black has slightly better pawn structure. So positionally speaking, this is equal. Instead, black decided to keep the position more active by not taking the bishop. Black just plays d5, gaining space. And now Anand takes this opportunity to save his dark square bishop. Bishop goes to f4, so the knight cannot take the bishop. And now bishop d6, so offering up another trade of the bishops. Now Anand could go for an equality. He can just play bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, and he can just play h3 and push the knight back, and the position is fairly equal. But he pushes for advantage. Now he plays h3. And again, black could just go back to f6. And then if white trades the bishop, queen takes, and this is again fairly equal. Again, kudos to both players. They wanted to push for something more. And in this position, it was bishop takes bishop. So of course, now if pawn takes knight, bishop takes queen. So this is bad. So what is white's idea here? I'll give you a few seconds to pause. Spend some time analyzing this position. So white's idea is bishop cross h7. The point being, if king takes bishop, h takes g4, a discovered check on the king. And if the king moves back, queen takes bishop. Now white is up a pawn. And also white has a free attack on the h file. So this is simply better for white. And if bishop blocks, in this position, if bishop blocks, we have g5 and we attack the pinned piece with a pawn. So white is again winning material here. So this line was rejected. Black cannot go for this line. Instead, black went for king h8. Now Anand takes on f4. Now if the knight goes back, obviously bishop will be saved and white is simply up a pawn, and white can also get an attack here. This is simply better for white. So this line was rejected and black goes for it. Black goes for knight takes f2, and again a very interesting juncture in the position. Black gets a fork. Black is going to win an exchange, but white is getting an attack. So Anand starts with knight g5. So the point being, the queen's diagonal is closed. So next, the queen h4 is going to be a very strong attack. So black played f6. Now Anand, instead of going back with the knight, he goes for f7 check. Brilliant move. Forces the rook to take up f7 square. So this in the long run would create problem for king's escape. So you'll see how this works. So of course, if you don't take, it's a fork, right? It's a fork. Knight attacks the queen and king at the same time. It's a knight fork. So we'll win the queen. So black has to take. And now a beautiful move, bishop g6. And white's idea is very clear, to go for check, go into an attack like this. Queen h4, h7, so on. Sorry about that. g6, knight cross d1. So black takes some material, black takes the rook, but this turns out to be a disaster. Queen h4 check, and now you cannot get into the attack. You cannot just go for an attack directly this way, because the king finds so the king moves to e7 square. We don't want that to happen, so very calm, just rook e1. So Anand he's making sure that the king cannot step, so that the e file is covered, so the king cannot step to e7 square. This is very important. And there's another bigger reason. Of course, Anand could have played queen h7 check, and then he could have played rook e1, but there's a very big reason why the queen stays on h4 instead of h7. So it's very neat. So now black is desperate. After rook e1, black is completely desperate. So knight takes pawn on c3, comes with a check. Pawn takes knight, so we accept the material. Now bishop e6 was played, trying to block the rook's file, but of course a rook can just take the bishop. And the point of all this sacrifice is to get this check here. And when the king goes to c1, and this was a resignation. King c1, it's resignation, because if you go for a check on g1, if black goes for a check on g1, now the queen is useful. The rook just retreats back, attacks the queen, and it defends. Rook defends at the same time, also attacks. So very neat attack, a very neat finish. And of course, now if black does something random, the checkmate is unavoidable. So a beautiful ending, very positional kind of an attack. When you are going for an attack, you look for all kinds of crazy sacrifices, but this was very positional, very much in the element of Viswanathan Anand. Thanks for watching.